Welcome to Relationships at Work, the leadership guide to creating a workplace we love. I'm your host, Russel Lolacher, a communications and leadership nerd with a couple of decades of experience in both of those areas, and a heap of curiosity, much like yourself, on how we can make the workplace a better place. This show is a great resource to help us with that. Every week on the show, I talk with local or global leaders on topics that are here to help us improve the workplace. We've tackled topics like negativity, culture renovation, activism, burnout, plain language, diversity, belonging, LGBTQIA+, inclusivity, communication, so many topics. And we're just getting started after 100+ episodes. And now as an added bonus, I'll be sharing an additional episode pulled from the pages of our weekly Raw Note newsletter, which you can still subscribe to. It's just a quick and valuable bit of information on top of our regular show. So the Raw Note I'm passing on to you this week is: beware the 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. On his podcast Rethinking, organizational psychologist Adam Grant, I love Adam Grant, spoke with psychologist John and Julie Gottman on the science of healthy relationships. John and Julie established the Gottman Institute, which uses research to help relationships. Generally, it's romantic relationships, but bear with me here. They do some pretty cool work. I'll actually add a link to their content in the show notes. On this particular show, on Adam Grant's show, as they normally do, they generally stuck to the marital type of relationships, like I said. But all relationships of any kind have some common DNA. Trust, respect, empathy, commitment, communication. These are the bedrocks of any type of relationship, especially in the workplace. A relationship is a relationship is a relationship. That's why this episode really jumped out at me, because it could be applied to the workplace easily. So in their conversation, they spoke on the 4 patterns in conflict that predict the end of relationships: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Tied together, they labeled them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse when it comes to relationships. But on this episode of the show, I want to go through each of these and how they might actually show up in the workplace, and maybe some things we can do to mitigate that, because the last thing you want to do is end relationships at work, because we all have to work together. We all have to move the organization and the employee journey forward. And we can't do that if we're ending relationships, especially through these 4 horsemen. And by being more aware, I think we can actually tackle this a little bit easier. So first out of the gate, let's talk about criticism. And you know how I am about definitions, so I want to define each of these before we get further into it. Criticism. It's defined as the construction of a judgment about the negative or positive qualities of someone or something. So let's look at it at work. It could be blaming a problem that we share with another colleague or business unit on a perceived flaw of theirs. Maybe we think they don't work fast enough. They don't prioritize work properly. They weren't as engaged or prepared as we were. Why not look at this differently? Here's a different way of looking at it than just having that criticism, which I know I've struggled with critiquing things. Maybe I shouldn't have or didn't need to in that particular situation. It certainly does not help the relationship. So why not look at it as we're all on the same team? We have this problem, not because of something anybody did, but there is this problem that we can solve together. I love this in relationships, where in the relationship, there's this problem you find, but instead of putting the problem between you, you put the problem to the side as something you both can tackle together. And I think that works for romantic relationships, but I sure as hell think it really works in the workplace as well. Okay, second horseman, contempt. This is where we evoke a sense of superiority, and we feel we have the right to judge with feelings of disgust, maybe even anger. So at work, all this really is criticism, but it's got a touch of scorn, of disgust to it. Maybe we're looking down at a colleague as inferior or having less value. We might see them as people that don't deserve the position they're in. Or maybe it's a colleague we feel isn't smart enough to be doing the same work as we are. So the solution to that is just stop. This is very much a check yourself before you wreck yourself kind of moment. If we want to be a great leader, which is always the intent, right? We want to grow and improve as leaders. We have to ask, where's the kindness in this? Where's the compassion, the consideration? In a nutshell, there isn't. When we feel contempt, we're not showing up with kindness. So we have to stop and maybe think again at how we're approaching this. The third horseman, defensiveness. This is where we're anxious to challenge or to avoid criticism. So where is this at work? Maybe your boss is telling you some things you need to work on, and you immediately bring up your own criticisms against them, or maybe your colleague or your team member, because you feel like you're being attacked. It's the, oh yeah, well, kind of thing, right? It puts up a wall because you're not listening or receiving the information. You're just immediately, like they say, on the defensive. So you're not taking in the information. You're just attacking because you feel like you're being attacked. It's like putting your back up against the wall and feeling like you need to pounce. If anything, the solution here is we may just need to shut up and listen. Hear the words and intent behind them. This is how we show leadership, by being mindful, considering the other person's perspective. And you know what? We may agree, we may not agree, but that is how they feel, that they feel they need to share their perceptions. And that's fine. But as a leader, we take that in and we process it. We consider it. And maybe we come back with a more thoughtful response than just being defensive in the moment and possibly ruining the relationship. Okay, last one here. Stonewalling as a horseman of the apocalypse for relationships. Stonewalling is a refusal to communicate or cooperate. Body language may also indicate and reinforce this by avoiding contact or engagement with your colleagues, crossing your arms, not making eye contact. So where's this in the workplace? It's pretty much a complete shutdown of one person to another, which is where they're listening, quote unquote, listening to another team member, but we don't give any body cues or facial cues, verbal cues, anything, any cues that indicate we're actually listening to the person. There's just no engagement whatsoever. We are not here to be a part of the conversation. So I guess for a solution, soften up. Remember, we're all on the same side here, the same team, the same organization, or at least we should act like we are. That means engaging, being aware of how our body reacts when others speak, being aware of how we respond in that, because the intent is to build stronger relationships at work, and any 4 of these can actually end them. There's power in the knowledge of these horsemen, that these can actually cause damage to connections that we're working to make and nurture in the workplace. Knowing and understanding this behavior in ourselves, because you can look at any one of those 4, and I know I've done all of them. At one point or another in my career, I've absolutely lent into any one of those, and I don't know the ramifications or the damage that they had. Sometimes I did, sometimes I don't. But to be aware, knowing and understanding this behavior in ourselves and others, like I said, it's a really good step towards mitigating it and maybe responding better next time. So think about how you react, because I'm going to someone or something at work that has rubbed you the wrong way. For whatever reason, is damaging or ending the relationship worth it within the context of the organization? Maybe it is, but we can't know unless we take that time to assess. Then we can take that awareness and use it to avoid any relationship apocalypses, which does sound better than being run over by a horseman. And that will do it for another Raw Note episode of Relationships at Work, the leadership guide to creating a workplace we love. I'm your host, Russel Lolacher. Thank you again for joining. If you have a chance and you like seeing faces as much as you like hearing words in your ears, check us out on YouTube. We've launched a few months ago and steadily releasing new episodes every Friday. So you get to see my smiling face and the amazing guests that we have on the show. So yeah, it's just another way for you to consume the content and grow your brain. Take care of yourself.